Hey there. Before we get started, I just wanted to come on and ask you all a favor. In our research, we've discovered that the vast majority of you do not actually like and subscribe to our podcast. And so, if I could ask you to do so, I won't ask you for anything else. And I promise to make this podcast the best I can every day. Me and the team really strive to do that for you. And so, if you could do this for us, we would be eternally grateful. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Mickelle Weber, founder and auteur of House of Peregrine. Expat, immigrant, pioneer, none of these were a fit, but Peregrine describes what we are all about perfectly. Those that craft their life story with intention. I've spent the last 6 years in awe of the life-changing connections and stories I have experienced while living abroad, and believe it is time for this adventure to be recognized, celebrated, and elevated to the life stage that it is. Through these interviews, I hope to connect those living internationally more deeply to both the place they are living and with themselves and those around them. We cover everything from international finances and meaning-making to global parenting and relationships to make your time abroad more intentional, edifying, and full of beauty. Find us at houseofperegrine.com, where you can find more ways to connect with the ethos of Peregrine. I hope you enjoy today's guest. Let's get started. Annebet van Mameren is an education placement specialist who lives with her American husband and 2 sons in Amsterdam. Her company, New to NL, specializes in making an international move a smooth one for school-age children and their parents. Using her vast knowledge and empathy, she guides parents to the way education works in the Netherlands and loves to orient internationals to her city. Her approach is to center a family's life on the school and neighborhood community instead of the parent's job, and in turn acts as an advocate for the child to have a comfortable transition to a new city, language, and way of life. This model of a neighborhood school is one thing that makes the Netherlands unique, and she helps families to take part in that so they have a more integrated experience while living here. Annebet has been a trusted advisor for thousands of families that have moved to the Netherlands over the past 10 years and has a special place in my own family story as well. While our plans to move abroad were still tenuous at best, I remember sitting at my house in Salt Lake City and talking with Annebet about our family's goals and values and how that would align with various schools and neighborhoods in Amsterdam. From there, she helped shape our strategy for integrating our then 5-year-old into school and also into bilingualism. She gave us guidance from her vast wealth of knowledge and heavily influenced which school and neighborhood we landed in, as well as what was very best for our son, which resulted in us fast-tracking our arrival so we could arrive before the first day of school for him. For us, that first year was transformative in so many ways, thanks to the great advice we received from Annebet. To have her on your team if you plan to relocate to the Netherlands is invaluable. Recently, after almost 8 years, we sought her guidance again with my oldest when we were compiling his list of schools for the Amsterdam Middelbaar School Lottery, a process that anyone who has done it can attest is incredibly intense, and as a non-Dutch parent seemed impossible. I enlisted Annebet yet again as a trusted advisor and expert to get perspective and match our family's values to the choice of schools my son would include on his list. Annebet is a rare gem, and I loved talking to her about what she does and why. She just celebrated 10 years of supporting companies and individual families in their move to the Netherlands. I'm really proud to bring her story to you today. Thank you so much for listening and following along. If this episode resonates with you, don't forget to share it. If you would like to join House of Peregrine and get your exclusive Laser 314 House of Peregrine Smart membership, you can join for €200 a year at houseofperegrine.com/marketplace. Members enjoy access to events and connections, as well as discounts and exclusive products and resources for living well internationally. Okay, on to the episode. Annebet, the woman, the myth, the legend. You really are someone who looms large in my expat and international life story. So I'm really, really happy to have you on today, finally. And I'm very excited to introduce you to the House of Peregrine community. So thanks for coming.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here on your podcast.
Yeah, good. So I want to tell the story of how I met you, but first I want you to tell everyone your story, where you're from, where you grew up, and what brought you to this work.
Yeah, great. Well, so my business is new to NL, and I started that about 11 years ago. And I help international families find a school for their children in the Netherlands, and I advise about everything related to education. What brought me there was really a combination of a lot of different things. So I am Dutch, and my mother used to be a teacher and a dean at the school for newcomers. So first for children and then for adults who had to learn Dutch.
Explain
So
what that is really quickly. So explain that just quickly. Sorry to interrupt.
yeah, so there were children who came to the Netherlands and they didn't speak Dutch and they couldn't really follow the classes at the regular school. So my mother helped set up some newcomer classes for them to learn Dutch and then develop their Dutch language skills and prepare them for regular school.
And she did that on her own or with the help of the government?
Well, with the help of the government and some other experts in that area. But she was one of the first to set up some of the newcomer schools. And now they're very common in the Netherlands.
Yeah, I didn't know
And
that.
later on, she moved to helping adults. So when they wanted to study in the Netherlands or find a job, but they didn't speak the language, then she helped them to integrate and to learn the language and find the right course or job for them. So we always had people from other countries at home and always had food that we couldn't pronounce the name of, but it was always very interesting. And then I studied organizational psychology and I specialized in intercultural conflicts at work. So I learned again a lot of things about different cultures, different people, which I found very interesting. And then I did the internship in Italy, and then I experienced a lot of those intercultural conflicts myself. So that was also very interesting. Then I traveled a bit, graduated, and then I moved back to Italy. So actually, I moved there twice. And I still have a lot of friends there. And so I still speak Italian, and I really like it. It's my second home. But at some point, I decided it was better to move back to the Netherlands and find a job here. So first, I worked for some international offices, and then I started my own business.
And so I
And
wanted to say, so this is what you're doing now is really, it came also through your mother, which is really beautiful.
yeah, that's how it started. And we always talked about education. And when I got children myself, and I had to find a school for my own child, I even found it difficult. And my mother has worked in education, and I am Dutch, and I grew up here, and I went to Dutch schools myself, and still it was difficult. And then I realized, and when you don't speak the language, and when you are not born here and you don't know how it works, it's even more difficult. So then I started to help international families. And first, I was the organizer of the Amsterdam Moms and Dads meetup group. So I organized play dates and mom's night out and all that kind of things. And I got a lot of questions, and especially about schools. And my husband is American, so I also know from his perspective how things work differently in the US. So I combined all that. And I was helping a lot of people just telling the same story one after the next and the next. And at some point I thought, okay, let's just give a presentation to the whole group. Then I only need to tell the story once. So I did that a couple of times. And then someone said, okay, now I understand how the system works, but how do I find a school for my own daughter? And I was like, yeah, you have a good point. So that's how I started to help people individually. And he referred me to his friends and colleagues. And so it
Just
grew
built
from
from there.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then at some point, a woman contacted me and she said, yeah, you helped me a few months ago, but I actually work for Netflix and they need help because a lot of their employees, they cannot find schools for their children. So could you come in and talk to us? Oh, sure. So that's how Netflix became my client. And I've helped a lot of their employees find a school. And some relocation agencies, they hire me, so they arrange a lot of other things like housing and bank accounts and all that kind of stuff. But for schools, they send the clients to me.
Yeah, it's a very special niche of moving
Yeah,
abroad.
exactly. Yeah, and that is how it grew. So very interesting how that went. I would have never thought when I started my business that it would go like this. So
I guess,
very happy.
yeah, I guess that's what happens when you just follow your instincts and then go word of mouth, which is kind of how the community works internationally. I
Yeah,
feel.
true.
So tell me, I want to go back a little bit because what you said was so interesting, that you moved yourself 2 times internationally and you married someone from a different country.
Yeah,
So those are also two really big things that I think can give you a different perspective than maybe someone who, again, what I lived in the same country my entire life until I was 36. So,
yeah,
so I
different
think that gives
experience
you a
then.
different
Yeah,
kind of empathy.
yeah. Yeah, and as a child, we moved a lot within the Netherlands, but still from the southeast to the northeast to the further east. So also as a child, I had to make new friends all the time, get used to a different school and different setup. And they've all different kinds of dialects. So in the beginning, I couldn't even understand the people of my new hometown. And so that was it was the same country, but as a child, that was a very big challenge for me as well. But in the end, I also learned from that, and I understand really what the clients are going through and what
Yeah.
their children are experiencing. And
That
so
comes,
when someone says, "Oh, my child can adopt very quickly, and we just move schools after a year, and then we move again," I'm like, "Nah, maybe that's not the right thing for your child, and just try and keep it stable as much as you can, and don't think that moving schools is very easy for your child." So
yeah. Yeah. And I think that comes through in your work. And I think it makes so much sense because when, so my story with you, maybe I can share that now, is that I was, we called you before we decided to move. So we called you. You were maybe the first or second person we talked to outside of the immigration IND, and they said, "I think I looked you up online or heard you on a podcast." And I talked to you, and you took a very exhaustive, like, you got to know us quite well, like what our goals were, why we were coming, who our kids
yeah,
were, and that was really comforting because as someone who had never moved internationally before, there were things I hadn't thought of. Also, my child had never been to school before. So those were two big, big deals. And
yeah, I
so
remember. Yeah,
he was 5. And
yeah,
in the US, 5 is when you go into school. But in the Netherlands, kids had already been in school potentially for a year already.
yeah,
Um, and so we went through the process with you, and that really helped our decision to move when we did. It affected our timing heavily with your advice because we wanted him to start with his classmates at a school. And so suddenly we were like, oh, maybe we can move. We were kind of taking our time to, oh no, we have to move in like 2.5 months to be there for the start of school. Um, and I'm really glad we did that because we had a choice and we weren't moving with the company. We were able to take that advice, which actually really helped in the long run for him to feel settled. Um, and and then
that's
we
good.
went and we ended up going to that school, and I made an entire group of friends of people from around the world, which informed my feeling. And so I think what I want people to take away from this is I think everyone who's done it knows, but anyone who isn't doing it, your kids being happy and you being happy is actually such an important part that we thought, oh, it won't be a big deal.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
And
And I
that's
think
why a lot
companies
of
sometimes think
companies,
this too. Do you
yeah,
see that?
yeah, a lot of companies hire me because when the children are not happy, their employees, so the parents of those children, they cannot focus well on their job. They have a lot of other things going on, and they are less productive then. Or when the children are so unhappy, they might decide to go back, and then you lose them. So it's in everyone's benefit to really set up the school beforehand, before the family moves. And And I find it very important to really find the right school. So that's why indeed we have this whole discussion about who you are, what you want, how long you plan on staying in the Netherlands, what your budget for education is, what your wishes are. So it really comes all together. And then I try and find the best school, and I explain a lot of things about the school so that for them it's also clear, yeah, what parents are coming and what the children are going to do. And
In some cases, you're also their first look into how different maybe Dutch culture is, especially in Amsterdam, especially with these neighborhood schools. Where you go to school is not every school isn't the same. And so they're all very independent. And that was something that was new to me. How do you explain that to your clients?
yeah, that is very true what you're saying. So most schools in the Netherlands are neighborhood schools, but it's not like that you have to go to the closest school close to your house, because in a lot of countries that is the case, but here it's not. There are many different types of schools. So there's, for example, Montessori, Dalton, Waldorf. There are some schools that are based on a religion, although most of them are not really religious anymore. So I cannot tell you you have to go to the nearest by school if that is a Montessori school and you don't care for Montessori, for example. So to find the right match is very important. But at the same time, most parents do choose a school that is close to home, because then they can walk there and they can more easily organize play dates and other things, which is also a very important aspect of Dutch school. So all parents have their own preferences, their own things that they find important and that they don't care for. So it really depends on the personal situation,
No,
and that makes it very interesting for me as well.
yeah, and I remember everyone saying to us, it's what you like. They're all good. It's what you like.
Yeah,
Um, and since you have such a history, I want to ask you about this. Why do you think it's done this way in the Netherlands? Because it's a very different approach, having all these different, like Montessori, Dalton. I don't know how it is in everywhere of the world, but in the US, these are private schools. The
yeah,
government doesn't do this, or
yeah.
tell me, is there a history there or something we can learn?
Yeah, it's very interesting actually, because um, previously the Netherlands was very divided by religion. So roughly the northern part of the Netherlands was Protestant and the southern part was Catholic. And people didn't really meet each other a lot. So they all had their own sports clubs, newspaper, radio stations. Everything was very divided. But the official religion was Protestant. But then a lot of Catholics were like, yeah, but we want to have our own schools. We don't want our children to go to Protestant schools. And then, so in the end, they had a school battle in the politics that took more than 100 years. So a
Whoa.
lot of debates and discussions. Yeah, it was very heated. And in the end, it was decided that all schools get the same funding, and and everyone basically can start their own school. Of course, there has to be inspection and everything, but if you have a solid plan and you can find enough students, then you can start your own school. And so first it was based on religion, but then some parents were like, yeah, we don't want any religion in the school. So they started neutral schools. So in that way it developed. And then some parents, they were like, yeah, but there's other concepts, other ideas about education. So and at that time, you had Maria Montessori, who started with her own concept, and Helen Parkhurst, who started the Dalton schools. So they incorporated all those different philosophies, different approaches in the schools. And then during the Second World War, the Nazis put a lot of Dutch politicians together in a sort of prison. And then they were forced to talk to each other. And then they discovered that actually the differences between the Protestants and the Catholics and the neutral people are not that big. So they had to unite to be strong together against the Nazis. So that is how religion became less important in the Netherlands, and the differences. And then when the television came, in the beginning, there was only one program per week. So one on the Protestant channel, one on the Catholic channel. And so you were only supposed to watch that program. But of course, TV was so special back then. So they also watched each other's program. And then also they discovered it's actually pretty fun. And why are we dividing everything so much? So since then, there's less and less division, and religion is less and less important in the Netherlands. So there are still a lot of religious schools, but most of them were built many years ago when it was still much more divided. And now you barely find religion in the school anymore.
Right.
But it varies per school. But so it's a long history of how that went. And so since the end of the school battle, all the schools get the same funding, and it doesn't matter what their approach is. And if they fulfill all criteria, then they're approved by the government. So there are a few private schools, but less than 1% of the schools in the Netherlands is private. Most of them are international schools. And the private schools, they're very small. And most children, they first go to regular school, but then if it doesn't work out because the class is too big, it's too overwhelming, then they might go to a private school. But even the children of the royal family go to the regular schools. So that is how common it is.
Yeah. And I think that is an incredible history that I never knew. So thank you so much for sharing that. And it makes a lot of sense. So just to be clear, so anyone can start a school as long as they have certain requirements met and safety and all this. What I've noticed is a lot of the schools were started by parents. Did you know that House of Peregrine has an app? It is full of resources, information, and products to make life as an international more connected and more intentional. As a member of House of Peregrine, you also now have access to exclusive discounts, products, guides, and events to make life more fun and connected. Simply download the app at houseofperegrine.com and save it to your home screen. Okay, back to the show.
Yeah, it is pretty common. But it also depends if you want to have government money or if you want the parents to pay everything. So if you want the government funding, then there's more rules. So then you can only start a school if there's no similar school based on the similar principles in the area. So that can be different religion that doesn't exist yet. But by now there are Islamic schools and Jewish schools and Hindu schools. So there's some approach in school nearby, but a lot of the previous schools, they were started by parents indeed, and then later they became part of a school group. So a lot of schools belong to a school board.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because you can tell, and you can tell in a good way. And so when I look at this system, I find it very comforting that parents or the people who are using it created it. That's always a good thing. But also, and I think this varies from school to school, but there's a lot of parental involvement and from mothers and fathers, which is, again, it varies from school to school. The school my kids go to is very heavily involved with parents. But the other thing that happens that I've noticed, and we're kind of getting into the weeds earlier here, is it makes it so the schools are all more kind of across the board. It's hard to say this is the best school. This is the best school because they're just all different.
Yeah. There's no ranking of schools like in some other countries. And every parent has their own criteria. So, I cannot say this is the best school because maybe I have different priorities than you have or your friends or your neighbors so.
That's very Dutch.
Which I love. I talk about the most suitable school based on your criteria. And that can be different for another family.
Yeah. I remember saying when we first were moving here, which is the best neighborhood? And everyone would say, it just depends on what you like. And I'm like,
Yeah.
surely all neighborhoods can't be good. And then I moved here. I'm like, oh, and it's the same with schools. I mean, some have, better scores or whatever, but it really varies year to year as well.
Yeah. Yeah. True.
Yeah.
And it also depends on the population, and so yeah, where you feel comfortable. And if there is a lot of parents who don't speak Dutch at home, then yeah, the children have to learn Dutch in school. So maybe they have lower results in the end, but maybe the added value of the school is much higher compared to a school where there's only Dutch parents who went to university, who help their children a lot to maybe arrange homework support and other things. Yeah, is that the merit of the school then? Or so it's yeah, it's
Yeah.
very hard to say. And
It's a more holistic approach of looking. It's a community-based way of looking at
yeah,
the school,
true. Yeah,
because the parents are part of the ecosystem, especially when you're an
yeah,
international person. And if
yeah,
you move here with
very
your
true.
partner, say you're a stay-at-home mom or stay-at-home dad when you arrive to the Netherlands, that becomes your first friends.
Yeah, yeah, true. And it also depends on the school. So in Amsterdam, there's more than of almost 180 different nationalities, and the Dutch are the biggest minority. So a lot of schools have many families from other countries, or where at least one parent is not Dutch. But some schools are a bit more Dutch than others. So that is definitely something to check out beforehand.
And what do you,
And
and when you, if they don't come through you, Annabet, what, you can't go to a school and say, so is this a Dutch school? What
well,
is the
you could
language
ask.
to use? Is population of international students or?
Now you could ask, so do you have more international families, and how would that work if we don't speak Dutch at home? Are you used to that? And maybe a school has very high results, but if they have no experience with children who speak multiple languages, who don't speak Dutch at home, when they don't know how to communicate with the parents, then probably you will not really feel very comfortable there, and you will not have much connection with the other parents. So that is very important to ask. And indeed, you don't ask, are you a very Dutch school, but just, so yeah, what is your experience with international parents? How would we communicate with the teacher? And we want to be involved, but we don't really understand Dutch. So what can we do instead? And so just ask them and see what they say. And if they're very resistant, then maybe it's not the right school for you. So
Yeah.
better
And
to find it out in advance.
yeah. And that's the thing I also didn't know is they want you to ask those questions.
Yeah,
So they want to have a conversation. Nobody wants you to be in the whole city, does not want you to be in a school that you aren't comfortable. But I was very shy about that when I first arrived because I didn't want to offend them and I didn't want to ask the wrong questions.
yeah,
But I guess part of the directness of this and also the way the schools work is you really are finding out if you're a match.
yeah, yeah, true. And the schools also recognize that they are not a good school for everyone. So they don't select students, but yeah, if they feel there's really not a good match, if the parents really have different ideas about education, or they are wishing something that the school cannot offer, then yeah, the principal might also tell you, so yeah, maybe the other school next door is a better fit.
Yeah.
And
Which
yeah,
was
they
which can be a shock, but you will
yeah,
always be thankful that they gave you that level of honesty.
exactly. And it is in the end about the children. And when the parents are not happy, the children will feel that they will not feel comfortable in school either. And yeah, they don't learn well. So you
Yeah.
want a place where your child can flourish, and but also where you feel comfortable, because as a parent you leave your child in school for many hours in the week. So if you feel stressed about that, then you're not happy, you're not doing well at your work. So it has a lot of consequences. It's better to prevent all that.
Yeah. And speaking of that, so I what I've noticed, and you can tell me your experience, we got really into the weeds here, Annabet. So I want to go back in a minute and talk about your services, but I'm quizzing you now because you're so wise. Um, what I've noticed I've learned after living here almost 9 years is that Dutch children their opinions are very highly held from a very early age, which I love now, but it is very hard to understand when you first arrive.
Mhm.
That children can talk to adults, their opinions, but also the way children are able to work out their own problems between each other. So I have the story when I first arrived that somebody, like my 5-year-old, was punched in the face, and I was shocked.
I can imagine, yeah.
Yeah, because, but what this is cultural, right? And that nothing's wrong or right. But I want you to explain, from your point of view, how you explain to your clients this point of view that children can work on their own problems, they can stand up for themselves, and that's a life skill.
Yeah, but children already from daycare, they are being taught that they have to indicate their limits and when they don't like something anymore. So maybe if your child is in Dutch school, they must have learned the phrase "stop, hou op." So that means stop. This is my limit. Um, I don't like it anymore. And first they have to say that. So if something happens that they don't like, they have to say stop, hou op. And already children from age 2, they learn how to say that. And sometimes that is enough. Some children who are punching or are hurting another child, when the other child says stop, hou op, they realize, okay, I did something wrong. So then it's good, it stops there. But then if it still continues, then the child should go to the teacher. So it's not that they have to solve everything themselves. But when they go to the teacher to complain about what has happened, the teacher will first ask, did you say something yourself? Have you indicated that you don't like this? And so that is step one. And then, if indeed the child has said stop, hou op, and it still continued, then the teacher will step in and try and solve it. And but they will also talk with the child who bullied or who did something wrong. So why did you do that? And the other child doesn't like it, and how would you feel? So to make them understand why they shouldn't do those things. And every school needs to have an anti-bullying program. So they talk a lot about what is wanted and unwanted behavior, and they do a lot of role plays. So they make the bullies feel, if you're getting bullied, how does that work on you? How do you feel about that? And so what are the consequences of the behavior that you are showing, and why should you not do that again? So they try to tackle that from different perspectives.
So instead of
Uh,
saying no violence, just none, they
yeah,
take into account that children are children, people are people, and you need to learn how to both defend yourself and not bully.
yeah, that is the ideal. And of course, yeah, things do go wrong. There is some bullying. People do get hurt. Children do hit each other. So that all happens. But they try to prevent it and solve it by talking and discussing from different perspectives, and also take the children seriously in this. And maybe the child who has hurt someone has been hurt themselves. So also analyze what's going on in the background. And maybe the child didn't learn from home that you shouldn't hit someone, or maybe they have seen someone hitting someone else and they think it's normal. So it's not only punish them, but also try to understand what's going on and how can we help things in a bigger scheme.
Yeah.
And but if a child gets hit, that is never good. So you shouldn't sugarcoat that. It should, and yeah, if the child cannot solve it themselves, then they have to ask for help for the teacher. So
Well, yeah, and I think that on the hitting side, maybe that child didn't learn, but what I learned from my culture is that we weren't telling kids to say their limits all the time.
Yeah, and that is very important. That's where it starts.
Yeah.
And also for your own empowerment, and later on that also translates to to giving consent to other people, so for sexual behavior and things. So I don't want this.
Yeah.
I don't like what you're doing. And I think that is very important. And that is what starts from a very young age, with hitting and biting each other, and just, I don't want this, stop.
Yeah.
So that's how it grows into more serious behaviors and things.
Yeah.
And that is really important. And so you can punish the other child, but then if they don't understand why they're getting punished, they maybe repeat it again. So it's important to make them understand why they shouldn't do things. And maybe they don't realize that the other child doesn't like it. Maybe it was a joke, maybe it was an accident. So if the other child clearly says, I don't want this, then it's very clear they shouldn't do it. So there's a whole story behind how
Yeah.
to approach
Well,
it.
but I think that the thing to note is it's cultural, because I think it's really easy if you come from a different culture that says no violence in school. Of course, they say no violence in school here. They're not going to say there's violence allowed, but it's this relational learning that is cultural that I think is different in different cultures. And so I think it's important to note when you go into a school that has less maybe less international kids, or this is just a culture thing, I think, which is really lovely, but it's really better to know about it beforehand.
Yeah, true. Yeah, and everyone comes from a different background, different culture, so they all have their own perspectives, of
Yeah.
course, and
Yeah.
and it's not good or bad, it's just different. So it's very important to understand the differences, and how to approach the children and the parents and the teachers
Yeah.
from those perspectives.
Yeah. And you're dealing with that with your clients. I mean, how many do you have a count for how many different people from different countries you've placed in Dutch schools?
Well, so now in almost 11 years, I've helped about 1,200 families, and most families have more than one child. So that's a lot of children. And yeah, I don't know the exact percentages, but I think around 75% of my clients chooses for a Dutch school.
Hmm.
And but that's also because the international schools, they communicate in English, they have an international program, so it's easier for international parents to understand.
Yeah.
So I often help them, what's the difference between this international school and that international school. And
Yeah. So why don't you
yeah,
start there? I want you to start with your process of how you help people. So walk us
yeah,
through that, if you wouldn't mind.
yeah, sure. um so yeah, I ask a lot of questions in the first call, so you remember that as well, of course, because it depends on so many things. The first thing is, how old are the children? So if they are already teenagers, they have been in an English speaking school, maybe it's easier for them to continue with education in English. And that offers more continuity, and maybe they can follow the same curriculum, so that's easier. But when the children are younger, then it could make sense to go to Dutch school, and and that has a lot of advantages, because, like we talked about before, the Dutch schools are neighborhood schools, so you really are part of the neighborhood. You can go to the same school with your neighbors. The Dutch schools are more stable usually, because at international school a lot of families come and go, so you have to make new friends all the time. Of course, families in Dutch schools do move, but less compared to international schools. So they have more stable friendships. And especially if you plan to stay in the Netherlands for a longer period of time, it has a lot of advantages to go to Dutch school. And there are more Dutch primary schools than international primary schools. And especially for secondary, there's many more options in the Dutch system compared to the international schools. And also for universities, there are a couple of universities that have their whole course in English, but there are more options in Dutch. So once a child speaks Dutch, then they have many more options in the Netherlands. But it also depends on what the parents want. And some parents have a very strong preference for the international baccalaureate, so the IB curriculum. There's a very few Dutch schools that follow the IB curriculum, but in general, you are stuck to the international schools then. Or they really want Montessori, but there's no international Montessori school. So then you end up at the Dutch school. So it really depends, what suits the parents, what suits their short-term and long-term plans. And if they are here for 1 or 2 years and they will move to another country and then soon after to another country, it's better to stay in the international system, because then the curriculum is more or less the same and they can pick it up where they have left off in the previous country. So then a Dutch school is really not a good idea for them.
Yeah. Plus, if people, what I learned is that you really have to convince people you're not moving. So they don't trust you for like at least 2 years. They're like, you're probably just going to move. So it's really hard to make friends. But then they're like, oh, you're still here. So then you start making
Yeah.
friends. And that's the number one question always is, oh, so are you planning on staying?
Yeah, that is true. And so you
So
hear,
socially, it really is hard sometimes if you're only planning on staying 2 years
yeah,
to make good
it's hard.
friends.
And then if you don't speak the local language and you don't really understand what's going on, and then maybe a lot of people they don't really, indeed they may not trust you that you are staying for a longer time, and they're like, I'm not investing in friendships, and then you're leaving again. So it can be hard then, indeed. And when you go to international school, then that's much more normal because all families are international. They're all moving a lot around the globe. So then parents understand each other better and they form friendships more quickly, and they know maybe this doesn't last forever. Yeah.
Do you think that's a skill or a perspective? So when you have, when you're living internationally or when you're moving quite often, you know how to make the kind of friends you need very quickly. And you kind of have an agreement that this won't be forever.
Yeah.
But we will need each other.
Yeah. And then maybe, you don't like each other really a lot, but it's very handy to know someone to do things together, to socialize, but then for different reasons. And I think, of course, that's not true for all people, but in general, Dutch people, they want to have more long lasting, stable friendships that they can really trust each other, really depend on each other for a long period of time. And then you don't really become friends with someone who's maybe here for just a few years, who you don't really like. And especially if you already have many friends, then why become friends with this new person? That can be difficult when you're new here. And so it's a good idea indeed to tell people that you are here for the long term, and that you really like to be in the Netherlands, that you try your best to understand what's going on, try to learn some Dutch, although most people do speak English, but they appreciate it when you speak some Dutch.
No, what
And
we call it the Uber rule now, where if about 5 years, if you say you've been here 5 years, like Uber drivers will not, they just start shaming you. They're like, you should learn the language. But it's touche. I totally agree. But it's just, there's a turn where it's like, oh, you've been here 5 years. And the parents at school are the same. They just are like, yeah, you should learn this by now. We're not coddling you anymore.
yeah, so in the beginning, they understand when you
Yeah.
have just moved from another country that you don't speak Dutch overnight. But when you have been here for a longer time, then you should at least try. Or so I've also met some parents, and they're like, oh yeah, no, I didn't read the newsletter from school because I don't speak Dutch. And I'm like, yeah, but you put your child in Dutch school, you have been here for 3 years, it's not a valid argument anymore that you don't know what's going on, that your child forgot to bring something because you didn't read the newsletter because you don't speak Dutch. So that's not the right attitude. And then maybe international school is a better fit. So it's a bit give and take.
And that's what you're determining when you first talk to someone, right? Is their openness to learn the language, their, what they are really trying to get out of this time in the Netherlands. And you really have to.
Yeah. What do you want? How do you see yourself? And there's no good or bad option. It really depends on what the parents like and want, and their budget as well, of course, because the international schools, they're much more expensive. It's very unique in the Netherlands that the government subsidizes some international schools. So they are around 5,000, 7,000 euros per year. And then there are some private international schools, and their fees are about 18,000, 20,000 and more per year per child. So that really adds up if you have multiple children. And the Dutch schools, they're practically free. They ask for parental contribution, which is voluntarily. So that does make a big difference. But it shouldn't be the only reason to pick a school. So I've had some clients that said, yeah, we are only going to stay for 1 year, but we cannot afford international school. So our child has to learn Dutch.
Oh.
But then I think, yeah, but when they're already 6 or older, they have to go to this newcomer class we were talking about earlier. It takes about a year to really become fluent in Dutch. And then you're moving again. So you shouldn't do that to your child. I really feel sorry then. So I always take the side of the child, what I think is best for them.
Yeah. Which I think you might be the only one, because the employer is kind of looking out. If they're moving with an employee, if they're moving their person from another country, they're looking out for the employee. Maybe they're looking out for their family. And then the parent who's going to be dealing with the school needs also someone helping them to make that good decision for themselves. And so I think that's what makes what you're doing really special, is that you turn into the voice of the child and the parents, and really advocate for their experience.
Yeah, and also some of my clients, before they sign their work contract, they talk with me to understand if their children would be able to find a good school. And only when I say, so yeah, there are several options, I'm sure it will work out, then they sign their work contract and they move to the Netherlands. But I've also had some clients in that position who in the end decided not to move. So for example, a 17-year-old from the US, they don't speak Dutch, so they cannot go to Dutch schools. The international schools, the diploma program takes 2 years. And so they're only missing 1 year in the US, but they have to do 2 years in the Netherlands. So yeah, they have to repeat a year while there's no academic reason. And then also for friendships and their social life, I really don't think that's a good idea to move at that age. So, and I give the parents all different perspectives. And in the end, it's the parents who decide, of course. But yeah, sometimes I tell them, so I really don't think you should move. And the same for children who have special needs. And if they're already a bit older and they go to school where they get a lot of support in their own language, and that goes well, and then bring them to the Netherlands. And there's a lot of support for special needs children, but most of it is in Dutch. But if they don't speak Dutch, that's not working. The international schools can only offer limited special needs support, or you have to pay a lot of extra money. So is that a good idea to move or a child with severe dyslexia and then bring them to a country with a different language that they have to learn with all their issues, or a child who has autism and then bring them in a completely different environment? I don't think that's a good idea. Sometimes parents have no choice. I understand that. But if they're really hesitating, is it a good idea or not? I'm like, probably not.
Yeah. Yeah. And so
you have all this wisdom. You share with them. You give them your perspective. You're like an advisor. I feel like you end up being an advisor in your move. So you have anything your employer provides, housing, whatever. But I think if anyone's considering a move abroad should know is if you have children, Annebet is the advisor you need for this part of your life. And so that I want you to tell people kind of what you offer, which I really think is important just because it's not something you know about until you need to know about it. And so when your kids are younger, say 2.5, would you say, to 12, what kind of help do you provide?
And that depends again on where you live. But in most cities, preschool starts at age 2. In some other places, at age 2.5. And most children go to primary school the day after their 4th birthday. So from 2 to 4, I help with preschool, but that's only half days per week. So usually around 16 hours per week. So if parents work full time, then I also need to arrange for daycare or a guest parent who is a sort of qualified nanny. So that depends a lot, what they need. And then
but you can arrange that. You can help them find.
I do that too. But when a child is 2.5 or older, then besides daycare and preschool, we also have to start talking about schools. And that comes as a surprise for a lot of parents. And so, like I said, most children start school the day after their 4th birthday. So they start throughout the year and not in the beginning of the school year necessarily. And then primary school is from age 4 to 12. And then secondary school from 12 to 16, 17, or 18, and depending on the level, and that's a whole other story. And
it's another
and then if both parents work, then they probably also need after school care, so I can also help with that, and that's also difficult to arrange sometimes. So it really depends on the ages of the children and the work situation of the parents and where they live.
But it's safe to say your fee, you charge a fee and then you help them with whatever placements they need. They're not guaranteed through you, but you help them make a good choice, get on the right list, get on the good side, whatever you need to do, like to know what to do. You help guide them to get into what would ideally be their ideal situation.
And I offer different packages depending on their needs. So there's introduction calls, so I explain just how it all works, and then the rest of the work the parents do themselves. I also have a special package that we talk about different areas and what schools are in this area. So if parents are still hesitating between different cities. So, in this city, there's a newcomer school that's a specialized school, and all children of the whole city go to that specific school. And in another city, there are regular schools with internal newcomer class, so really depending on what you want. So that's how we talk about that. But there's also an all-inclusive package, and then I really take the parents by the hand and I guide them through the whole process. And I ask the schools if they have a place, and if they do, then I write a report about the school so the parents understand how the school works and what the school hours are and where they can find the vacations and what type of school it is, and a lot more information. And I give the parents a checklist that they can use when they visit the school. So with a lot of questions that if you don't know that you can ask something, you don't ask it. But so they get a lot of ideas about, it's good to ask if someone else wants to pick up my child from school, how that works. So they sometimes I visit the school and then I see parents walk around with my checklist, which I really like. And I've also written a sort of summary in English of the school guide. So it's a template that I've given to the schools, and they only need to fill out the name of the teacher and the exact school hours, but the rest is already there, so they can give that to the international parents. And I set up visits for my clients, so I arrange everything that they know where to go and whom to talk to. And if they want me to accompany them on the school visit, then I charge extra for that. So it really depends on what they need, and all packages are tailor made, and then can be extra with preschool, after school care, or any other things that they need. And then I have a special package for communication with the school. So some parents, they have an issue at school, or they don't know how to talk to the teacher, and then they can talk about it with me, and I can give them some perspectives.
Oh, you do? That's new. So like if you need, it's almost like therapy.
Sometimes it
Like
feels like that. Yeah, but that's fine. That's
yeah.
or they, and that is what you mentioned as well. So a lot of Dutch people, they're pretty direct in their communication style, and they just tell you exactly how things stand. But a lot of parents, they are not used to that. So they ask me, the teacher told me this. How should I interpret that? So just what they said. Yeah, but maybe they
Yeah.
mean this, or maybe. So if the teacher says that they don't like that the child disrupts the class, and they say that to the parents, but then some parents feel like, oh, maybe they want to expel our child from school. Do we need to find a new school? Do we need to talk to the principal? So why? They just said your child shouldn't disrupt the class. Period. That's it. You don't need to read in between
Yeah.
the lines, and if you don't agree
Yeah.
with that, or if you don't know how to approach that with your child, then ask the teacher. So it's an open conversation. They expect your input. They expect to hear your opinion. And if you don't agree with the teacher, that you just tell them so. And so I inform the parents how those things work, what the teacher probably expects from them, and how they should interpret the message they get from school.
Yeah. And then you send them back in, because it really is like, as a parent, as an international parent in a Dutch school, there are those moments where you're like, you get overwhelmed with always not knowing
True.
exactly what's going on. And so even if you know that, this is a cultural difference, there's directness here, it really, just talking it out with
Yeah.
someone is really helpful. And so in your journey, I think that's a really beautiful thing you offer, because sometimes you just need, and we have a WhatsApp group for international parents that we go, oh, am I
Yeah.
crazy, or is this just, normal? And it's not because we think it's wrong, or it's just like, am I crazy moments where you're like, okay, is
Yeah.
this normal? Is
And
it
it
my
is
kid
different from what
because
I
I'm crazy?
expected, and how to approach
Yeah.
that. But also for Dutch parents, especially with their first child, they encounter a lot of new things as well. So, yeah,
That's true.
so they often have questions as well, how to approach that. But they don't think it's cultural. They just think, oh, just don't understand it, or
I don't know
the
what to do.
teacher
Yeah.
is weird, or whatever. So it also depends on what label you attach to it. Oh, this is Dutch, or this is different culturally, or maybe it's,
This is school culture.
yeah.
This is the
And
teacher.
then,
Yeah. There's so
yeah, so
many
it's
things.
just how to communicate with the teacher. And so especially with my older son, he came home with some stories that I was like, what? Huh? What happened? So then I just went to the teacher the next day. So yeah, my son told me this. I really don't understand. Doesn't make sense to me. Can you explain? And then it usually turns out that there was a different context, or the child just interpret something in the wrong way that didn't happen, or so then you understand better what's going on. So my advice is just to talk with the teacher in a neutral way. You were not there when those things happened, so you haven't seen it, but just ask the teacher, okay, can you give your perspective, and then try and solve it, and then move on. So don't keep on building up all those things, or escalate it to the principal right away. First, talk with the teacher, and most of the things, it's a misunderstanding or miscommunication, or the child doesn't have all the words yet to explain exactly what happened. and then you can solve it and it's okay. With the second child, I understood better how things go, so it was easier for me to interpret things. But that is something you have to go through as a parent, and it's also part of growing up as a child, but also as a parent, you are still learning a lot of new things as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about, and we're going to go a little bit over if that's okay, is middle bar school, which is the equivalent. So when the children turn 12, I don't want to go over the whole system, but it is unique in the world, I believe, that children have such a huge decision, and they're placed in a school that they'll be at for the rest of their school career when they're 12, and that's a differentiator for the Netherlands, I think.
Yeah, we could fill a whole
and you help people through this process.
Fill a whole new podcast about this.
That's right.
So,
but how do you help parents through this process? Because it is rigorous, even for Dutch parents, even if they know it's coming. It is a big deal.
Yes, it is a big deal, but it's less decisive for the rest of the lives of the children, like a lot of international parents think. So in the end of group 8, which is around age 12, that's the last year of primary school, then the teacher gives an advice for the next level of secondary school. There's basically 3 levels, but yeah, some more to that, but let's keep it to 3 levels to make it easier. And the teacher looks at the whole child. So they look at the test results from group 6 onwards, so not before that. But they also look at the child's motivation, ambitions, intelligence, study skills, eagerness to learn, interest. So the whole package, so to speak. And then they give pre-advice, what we call. And then the children take a test. Previously, it was called the end test, but from this year, it's called transition test. And then if the test results are higher than the teacher's advice, the child can go to a higher level of secondary school. And if the test results are lower, then the teacher's advice stays. So this test is only like a second opinion.
Yeah. And I know when my oldest just went through this process, and I would say our entire family went through this process, with all the school tours, and it really is, all the schools are so different, but I reached out to you, 9 years later. So at the beginning of our journey as international people, and now again with this transition, we came to you with our list, and you really helped us. We sat with a session with you, and we really were able to reflect on what we need, what we want, and that was really valuable.
And then Amsterdam is very difficult because there is a lot of schools, and some schools, they are always oversubscribed, and other schools, they always have enough places. And for this reason, there is a lottery, and depending on the level, you need to write down 4, 6, or 12 schools out of your preference. And that is a lot. And it's very hard to talk about preference if you arrive at school number 8 or lower. But this is what they have to do to offer guarantee of placement. So you get at least one of those 12 schools. It's a whole process, but it's very Amsterdam specific. So when I try and explain this to my friends in other cities or in the countryside, they're like, lottery? What? But it's good to know that a lot of schools, they combine different levels, and it's very common that the first year they have multiple levels in the same class, and sometimes even in the second and the third year as well. So this streaming takes place later, and not so. Still, a lot of things can still change. And then with the diploma of one level, you can also move up to the next level. So it's not that you stay at the same level for the rest of your life. And then also later on, there's a lot of options. So in the Netherlands, we make a distinction between research university and university of applied sciences, which in a lot of other countries is just called university. So that is also confusing. So you don't need to have the highest level of secondary school in order to go to good university. So there's so many things to consider, and it is difficult. It's especially if you come from a different system and you have different experiences. It can be very overwhelming.
But I think that the striking thing that I noticed, and again, we didn't get our first choice, but I respect the notion that every single person can be put in their 12th choice. So you really do have to, you go to these schools and rich, poor, expat, it doesn't matter,
Your grades
immigrant,
or anything,
you're
nothing
all,
matters. It's completely random.
these are the schools, and the parents, again, and I said this from the boss's school, the parents are faced with the reality of that their kid could go to this school. And so it's not like you can just move to a certain zip code and get the school, which is what happens in the US, right? And so I think, and I hope that it keeps more of an equalizer on the schools, even though there are some, of course, that have better scores and all that stuff. But
everyone has equal chance.
I can respect the process.
So there's no postcode policy for secondary school. So all children from all districts, they can apply for all the schools in the whole city if they want to. And then again, in secondary schools, there's also a lot of different types. So based on a philosophy or religion, or some schools have a stronger focus on art or languages or sports or technical subjects, or so they all have the same basic curriculum and the same exams and the same diploma, but then they can do a lot of things in their own way and offer different stuff on top of the basics. So it does make a lot of difference which school you pick. And then you hope, of course, that you will arrive at your first choice, but unfortunately that's not always the case for everyone. The algorithm is written in such a way that everyone has placement guarantee and that they get into one of the higher schools on the list. So for most children, they are lucky. So it's about 95% in the top 5. But some children get school number 11 or 12, and that's very sad. That's really difficult. But it can happen to anyone. So it's not based on anything personal or related to your family or culture or whatever. It's just random, but very bad luck.
But it keeps, well, I guess even being through the process and not getting our first choice, I can still respect the system because it keeps some sort of sanity.
True. And not everyone can go to the same school. And
maybe I'm just an Amsterdammer now. Like maybe I just understand it now. Have I arrived at some new level of Zen? Because I can not get my first choice and still be like, well, but I respect the system.
I think that's a very healthy way to approach things, and you really cannot influence it. So
No, it's great. Well, and I think that what is really lovely is that our story, like my story with New to NL and Annebet, is that at every kind of inflection point you've been kind of with us, which I think is really beautiful. And I think that you're providing something that changes people's lives. And so I think that that's why I wanted to bring you on. I think everyone I know in the international community has some sort of experience with you. So you're beloved. But also I think there's something very there's a calling in you that makes this something that's really important to you. And so that brings something very special to the work you're doing and
really like
the community
and I'm
at large.
really happy when I find a school for the children and then I meet the parents years later and they still go to the same school and they really feel at home here and they are all happy, and I really, really, really like that. And I'm very happy, especially for the children, that it went so well. And some of my clients I've become very good friends with, and we see each other a lot. We go on vacation together, and we met them as a service provider and client, and then we still hang out. So I really enjoy that.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I think I was just going to joke that maybe it's your fault that Amsterdam is full of internationals.
Well, it makes Amsterdam more interesting.
I'm kidding, of course.
I really like it. So if I can contribute to that, I'm very happy.
You're bringing the world to you. You live in Amsterdam and you're bringing the world to you.
I'll
No,
take that.
it is a lot. There are a lot of
Yeah.
internationals in Amsterdam. Like but I think it's lovely. So thank you for everything you do. And thank you for all this information. And if people want to reach you, and you have a ton of resources on your website about webinars and stuff, how is it best to reach you?
Yeah, through my website. There's a contact form on the website. You also find my email address, and you can book a call through the website. So if you go to new2nl.com, then you'll find everything you need.
So that's new to the number 2
Correct.
NL.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
.com. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for all your help throughout the years. And I have 2 more children, so maybe we'll be seeing each other again. But for now, we say goodbye. And again, thanks for coming on.
It was really great to be here.
Okay, that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed our show. For the latest insights on living internationally, join us at houseofperegrine.com to find out how you can connect with our community. Let's craft our life story with intention together.